for something that's just not that standard, but something, of course, of value. And having the information sooner rather than later. Some places I read are having parents write letters before the lesson. Like, this lesson is happening tomorrow, let us know. And that did feel authentic, I think, to anyone on the committee. We wanted to make sure we were ahead of this and had the information so that we can properly plan for all of our students.
We want to make sure, again, that everybody's using the same tool. Because what's happening currently, I guess this started up at people looking Sunrise School. And so what's happening is a few of the principals have already received what people are calling opt-out letters. And they're drafting stuff. We can see they're copying and pasting from where they're getting this information. And that's fine, except we really want you to use this one. This is what's going to be in our system, and this is going to keep, if you opt out, we know they're in this system, we're going to see that. Not a separate note or a letter coming in that's, again, I want to avoid the papers going to the principal's office at the last minute. Let's just do it this way. Okay. And I can also tell you that,
No,
okay. I can also tell you that, in all my years of dealing with coming up with new curriculums, in my last district, I went through a similar type of situation with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we didn't share nearly as much as on the document that you received yesterday. So this is really pretty intensive. You have all samples of what's coming from the state. You can link into other areas that you want to look at, and we added what's going to be resources as well. So I hope that that's very helpful for you. And I think at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Madison.
Thank you, Dr. Shika and Ms. Mulholland. I know you guys have been working really hard. We've been meeting a lot on this and discussing the curriculum. So it's actually been a lot of work, and I really appreciate your efforts. We're going to move on to petitions and hearings of citizens for agenda items only. And I kind of want to recap for all of you what's happened in this community since I became board president, since this board was formed. We had to remove a board member, and we had to fill a position. We had 6 community members apply for one board position. Any one of those 6 people could have served on the board. The 6 of us that had to interview them had a very hard time picking that person. Our superintendent left, and we decided to do an interim because it takes a while to do a good search. So we had 6 people apply, all highly creditable, really good applicants. And again, we had to sit down, we had quite a hard time picking just one, but we all picked Tony, Dr. Rashika. We had 6 people apply for that. We had to do the superintendent search. We had 32 people apply to our superintendent position. Our New Jersey School Boards Association rep was stunned. Of the 32, we narrowed it down to 14, and we interviewed through phone interviews, and then we interviewed 9. We did a second round of 7, all highly qualified people with lots of experience. We were unanimous in selecting David Mango. We then had a director of curriculum leave, and we had a beloved principal and staff member return to help us out as the interim. In the community, we've had 100 anniversary celebrations where people have volunteered and come together to celebrate 100 years of Kinnelon. I've had a lot of fun with them actually myself, especially bartending. Thanks for that, Angie. We had Pride Day, where we had a lot of people there. It was a great celebration for the LGBTQ community. We had an amazing Veterans Day last November, where we flew in a Black Hawk and celebrated our veterans. We've had an unbelievable turnout at football games, soccer games, supporting our kids. We are having a homecoming dance for the high school for the first time since I've lived here. I went to sign up for the high school stuff, and a lot of slots are already filled. The second week of school. Why do I highlight these things? I want you guys to think about the community you come from and what we have accomplished and what we can do. And I've said this at other meetings, but what unites us is far more important and greater than the small few things that divide us. And I emphasize that now because we're volunteers up here. We have the best interest of your students at heart. All of us have kids in the district, and we care immensely about their education, and their schools. So I invite you to come up. I invite you to please share your comments and thoughts, but please do so remembering that we're here as volunteers and we're in this with you. Okay, we're one community and we're a great community, and we can do all of this together. You have 3 minutes. I will time it, and we're going to try to keep it to, an hour or so, but I don't think we'll have that many people. Who's first? Anyone want to talk?
Can you just say your name?
Can't hear her. Again.
Katie Talbot, 28 Brookville Road, parent. So I just had a couple questions, just for clarity. I know I wasn't here all summer, so maybe some of these things were addressed. I know that at the end of last year, when we were talking about curriculum, several of our high school students came forward and asked to have some input themselves into the curriculum and speaking out and advocating for their ability to basically have their education and have a say in some of their education. So I was curious if that did occur, whether our older students were able to partake and say, we feel we have the right to this education as they would if they were going to their physician's office, and they have the right to an education that possibly their parents might not want them to have. My second question is, with that said, we know that kids talk. So a child that is opted out by their parents, how are the teachers, counselors, nurses going to address the fact that what this group of students has learned in the classroom, they're not sharing that with the students that are not supposed to be learning that? That's going to be a great challenge. And with this education, I don't believe it's right to say to the students, what is said is in this room stays in this room, because that's not what we're teaching. We're teaching an education, and they should be taught to continue the discussion elsewhere with their parents and the community. So I was just curious about that. Thank you.
Jen Portman, 30 Highlands Drive, I'm a parent. We need more time. I appreciate what you've been through as a board, working so hard to hire different personnel and go through different things. I appreciate the interim superintendent and Ms. Mulholland coming in, with very little time to try to put this together. But as parents,
We haven't been involved in the process. Can't hear her.
following the process. And I hear you asking for 2 weeks' time for an opt-out form, but we've only been given less than 24 hours to look at the curriculum. And tonight, we saw standards, but we didn't, we here haven't spent time actually looking at the curriculum. Thank you. So I just feel more time needs to be given to parents, to the public, to be able to look at it, to provide feedback so that it is implemented well or decided not to be implemented. I also feel that a different opportunity than coming and getting 3 minutes to speak would be better to provide our thoughts. Parents found out about this yesterday, but the average taxpayer, the parent who has a 4-year-old and doesn't receive communication from the school yet and thinks they're sending their kid to kindergarten for the next 13 years next year, hasn't had an opportunity to provide any input. And I know you've set up the Citizens Advisory Committee. I think it's a great idea. I think it's really good for dialogue. I think it's great to share ideas. But there hasn't been a process put in place for anyone from the community to communicate to the Citizens Advisory Committee. So I saw that you met for 3 times, but you heard what those 13 people think. It might be what I think, it might be what the rest of the public thinks, but you really don't know that. There's no process put in place for us to share our thoughts, our concerns, our feedback. And I really think that, hopefully that changes in the future, but it didn't happen this time around. So I think that at this point, you really have not heard how parents feel, and they're a major, major part of this. The other thing I'm wondering is that if the Citizens Advisory Committee met, I'm guessing it was 3 weeks ago or so, did they have access to the curriculum like we saw last night? If they did, then why didn't we? Why didn't we have 3 weeks to look at it and provide feedback? And if they didn't, then the times that you were meeting, you were talking about the idea of curriculum, but if they didn't have exposure to the actual details, then you weren't really getting feedback about the details again. And the same goes with the board. I don't know when you received the curriculum. If you received it last night like us, I don't know how you could have had enough time to truly look at all the details and say, yes, this is appropriate for all. And if you have had it for a while, it's really not appropriate that you didn't share it with us to get the feedback.
Hi, Dana Leonard, Ridge Road. I'm a parent. And I'm going to echo some of Jen Portman and also Katie Talbot's comments without trying to be too redundant. I'm speaking specifically regarding the timing of this vote. And I've said it in the past, but the board members have been put in a very difficult position again on this. I attended the health curriculum meeting last spring led by Diane DiGiuseppe and Yvonne Cerisi. And there we were told we would have the new curriculum that would be written over the summer, presented to parents and the advisory committee, which was then under formation. We would be able to see this prior to the start of the school year and prior to your vote for the approval. Even the state at that point had formally encouraged districts to get feedback from the community. So when I see standards having a middle schooler like the following: oral sex is sexual activity in which the genitals of one partner are stimulated by the mouth of another. This is taken from our curriculum and it's termed declarative knowledge. It makes me wonder what the consequences are for the children who opt out in those families. How will this be handled? I've been told that there's an urgency to approve this curriculum this month from the state. And unfortunately, many of the states have in lockstep rolled out this controversial curriculum. And it's my personal belief that there's no coincidence, that it is a coincidence. It's no coincidence. Over 2 million children have exited or opted out of the public school system between 2020 and 2021. And specific to Kinnelon, the declining enrollment has been discussed at previous meetings, and a very significant portion of the current 9th grade class left Kinnelon for private schools last year. I think the timing of this being released to parents yesterday it's unreasonable, and also to the board and to the advisory committee. My question is, can you confidently say that you've had ample time to review, explore the links and the resources, and understand the process by which this will be rolled out? The ultimate obligation is to the children, so have you considered whose interests are protected or neglected